Welcome back to the show. Per usual, we workshop the intro to the show, and today we're going a little off the beaten path. So it's cars and kicks, kicks and cars.
Oh,
We put them together like a star. We're talking cars and kicks, kicks and cars. We put them together. And here you are. Thank you.
wow.
Thank you.
This is
Thank
like,
you. Thank you.
I was not expecting avant-garde Broadway-esque. Like, wow, he's got an audience. Look, for y'all that can't look, either Jacques has gone crazy in the week that we took off, or he's got an audience in his studio right now.
Either one is perfectly reasonable expectation.
Oh, man.
Welcome back to the show. I am Jacques Sling. Welcome to the Cars and Kicks podcast. As you know, on this show, we talk about cars, and you wouldn't guess it, but we also talk about kicks, which are two things that all three of us are very passionate about. We have a very special guest on the show today, and I'll let Eric tell you a little bit about him. But thank you all for watching everything that you've watched so far, for enjoying the podcast. If you're new here, buckle up because the ride gets really wild and unruly. But, you know, that's just us having fun and enjoying ourselves here. So I'll toss it over to Eric. Eric will intro Nick. Nick will throw it back to Eric, and then Eric will introduce our guests or something along those lines. I'm just making all that up. They didn't really give me
as
a
y'all
bullet
can
list
tell,
of how this show is going to go.
We really planned this one out. We took that week off. We took that off. We went on a retreat, and the three of us just sat by the campfire, and we said, look, this is where we want the show to go, and this is the result. So, no, I'm Eric Valdez. I'm the resident car guy here who happens to like sneakers. Jacques is the sneaker expert, and Nick is like the guru of all things cars and kicks. So,
all things.
Yeah, Nick, say hi to the people for us.
I didn't realize when we were sitting around that campfire that the direction we were going to take is off the rails, but I'm excited to see where this goes. My name is Nick Engvall. I've been working in the footwear business for 15 plus years now, and obsessed with cars for multiple decades. I don't need to tell you how old I am because you might all pretty old leave, you know? So, but yeah, that's all I got. Excited for this episode though. Pre-show was very short and sweet, but I'm already looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's like as you can tell, we've talked about it, and if you listen to us regularly, first of all, thank you. But we did take last week off. It was Labor Day. We did some things. Nick was out on a really what did you call it, Nick? A bucket list trip in the pre-show. Tell us about what you did, because man, it looked awesome.
So first and foremost, just shout out to the whole sneaker community, you know, the guys that put this trip together. Jacques actually went last year to a little kind of retreat. There's not a name for it yet. We called it the Gathering. We called it the PDX Sneaker Summit. But Aaron Cooper's a designer for Nike, or was a designer for Nike for years, created many of the shoes we'll talk about on this show and have talked about on this show. And he kind of is spearheading a really cool project up in Portland that, you know, I was lucky enough to get invited to be a part of this. And, you know, I decided that I'd just take it as an opportunity to drive up the coast and disconnect for a little bit as well. But camped in Crescent City, or outside of Crescent City on the way up, and camped outside of Fort Bragg on the way back. And, you know, it's one of those moments where you're like, wow, like no cell phone reception is kind of the move right now. So, but the trip itself, man, getting to tour Nike is always a fun thing. You know, I've been lucky enough to be there a handful of times previously, but to see everything that's happened since the pandemic on campus in Beaverton was really eye-opening. You know, they really took the chance to redo a lot of the buildings internally and some externally during the pandemic, because people were, you know, obviously not working from campus, which is really cool to see. The, you know, some of those buildings have been there for a really long time, but the architecture at Nike campus, and, you know, the Japanese garden and the lake, and just all of it is so inspiring. and to get to see, you know, the LeBron James building, we'll throw some photos up on our Instagram around the whole trip for me. But, you know, the LeBron James building is, you know, the most technologically advanced, you know, essentially wear testing and product testing everything on the face of the planet. It's light years beyond. Like, if there was somebody that said something along the lines of like, well, we used to have one here and we were kind of cutting edge. Now we have 50. And that kind of tells you how far they're trying to go with the, you know, just like the direction of all this stuff. But all of that is really cool. But I think the coolest part about campus at this point is that the Serena Williams building has like leveled up campus completely. It's, you know, I can't remember, 30, 20 stories, something like that. And, you know, most of the buildings on campus are 4 or 5 tops. So it was really cool to see that. It makes it feel really modern. It's kind of like you can kind of walk around Nike campus and see the progression of like, okay, here's where we started. Here's where we grew in this boom and this era and this athlete, and all the way around, and to see kind of the level up of that Serena Williams building was like really cool to see, you know, kind of like puts it into perspective as to like how well she's done in her career, how much she means to the brand, and also, you know, how much they've really kind of decided to go all in on campus. Cause I don't know if you guys know this, but there was talk in as recent as like probably early 2000s, maybe 2010-ish, that they were considering some other options for other corporate buildings around Portland for Nike. And that in itself was like a big statement to stay in Beaverton, to keep everybody kind of there. And man, it's such a crazy place. But yeah, that was like the kind of main like shareable moment. But like, you know, so many of the people from that were guys that I have known through the internet for, you know, 2 decades for some of them, and getting to like actually meet them and shake their hands and get to know them and talk with them, and just really felt like a kind of take back to, you know, the early 2000s when Nike Talk started, and Soul Collector forums, ISS forums, where like it wasn't about, it's exactly what we talked about on a previous episode. It wasn't about the transactions. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about sponsors. It was about bringing the community together and sharing stories with each other. So, you know, like it was just unbelievable. I'll share some more stuff on the Instagram, and, you know, just kind of share the guys that supported it, put it all together, made it all happen. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how Jacques' experience was last year, but this felt like, you know, like something that like needs to happen regularly, that everyone that has been into sneakers and has kind of, myself included, you know, like gotten tired of the transactional nature and the money driven nature of the business. And not to say that it doesn't always exist and have its ebbs and flows, but this was just a really, really powerful reminder for me as to like why I got into it, even as a kid, why I even cared about these sneakers, you know? Yeah. So throw that on top of like, you know, I lived in Oregon as a kid, got to drive by and see some of the homes that I lived in, you know, when I was younger, and have those kind of like memories come back, and hanging out in the parks that I used to hang out at and like take the time was just a much needed experience for me. So yeah,
I look forward to seeing all the behind the scenes pictures of this. I'm sure some of the stuff you can't share, you know, in some of the buildings is top secret, but maybe I'll go next year or whenever this next one is. But for now, it'll be dope to share some of that.
I would say, think of it as like a cars and coffee, but you get to tour like the Ferrari factory.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah. Wow.
It's like the people that will come to, you know, the kind of people that will come to a Cars and Coffee, but then you guys are like at the Ferrari factory touring the facilities, and like the designers are there and all of that kind of thing. It's like, that's kind of what it is.
That's super cool.
And the community aspect of it, you know, it's kind of like what we talked about on the Monterey Car Week episode. You know, I think the beauty of it is like, I forget who said this. Apologies to whoever said this to me. We were standing around, you know, we're at Dead Stock Coffee, which is Ian, who owns Dead Stock, has a new location coming soon. And it's a beautiful space. It's going to be so awesome, actually in the Beaverton area. And, you know, we've got like the generational history of the people that, like Alex that started Soul Collector, Nick DePaula, who's, kind of taken Soul Collector and gone all the way up to the ESPN levels, and myself being a part of that team for many years back in the day as well. But like there were probably 50 to 100 pairs in this, kind of room that we were all sharing the stories of and looking at. And I kept saying like, it's crazy enough that I'm standing in this room with one, there were definitely a couple of shoes that I had never seen before ever, which is a rare thing, not to brag, but I obsess over this unhealthily. And, I've looked at and seen and know so many people that have really ridiculously rare pairs. But to see all those shoes, to be standing around and thinking, wow, not only seeing this with a bunch of people that appreciate and can nerd out about this the way I can, but to also have all the people, not all, but a good portion of the people that were involved in creating them was such a powerful moment for me. But on top of that, somebody said, isn't it crazy? We've all been here for like a few hours staring at these shoes, telling these stories, and nobody's mentioned a thing that there's well over $1 million worth of sneakers sitting on that table right now.
Wow.
And like, that's a really cool thing, like it's kind of reminds me of the Monterey Car Week stuff that I really like just thrive with, where it's like, you take away the ego that comes with all that money, and you really kind of see the people that make this stuff happen, whether it's on the production side and the design side, the creative side, the marketing side, all of that to get it to all of us on the other side of it that just love it and share those experiences and get other people excited about it by sharing our experiences. So it was really like just an unbelievable experience. And I just hope we can do more of this kind of stuff. This is kind of like where I see like our lane coming is to bring these kind of conversations together and, really kind of like let people tell their stories and introduce new people to our audience. And it was really exciting. And yeah, I'm excited for this episode even, just like it's like
I
mean, that's leading us right into it.
Great segue into the fact that we do have our now second guest that we'll bring on the show here in just a little bit, who is a good friend of mine. We met years ago, and I'll let him tell some of the stories when he comes on here. But he is, this encompasses everything that he loves too, the whole cars and kicks side of thing, and it's something that he didn't just get into; he's been into his whole life. And so, yeah, I mean, it's I guess without further ado, we're gonna leave you guys hanging there for a little bit, but we're gonna bring on Peter Chaney, who's been a friend of mine for quite some time now. There he is. Welcome to the show, Peter.
What up?
Welcome, Peter. What up?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to talk a bit about my weekend and going to the WEC race with my son, but Nick, that was the longest Nick has ever talked on this podcast.
So I know, right?
I didn't want to steal his thunder.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, that was awesome, man. So, no, and it was a great segue into this, like bringing people, into this meshing of worlds of cars and kicks. And there's the sneakerheads, there's the car people. Nick, you alluded to the fact that even offline, some of the people you were talking to up there are not necessarily car people, but they've been listening to the podcast and they like the stories, and the similarities on both sides of things really resonated with them. And, that's when we started talking about bringing guests on. This is the type of thing that we wanted to do, is find people who are really into both sides of things, who really get them. And so, Peter, I'll let you talk a bit about yourself, but Peter and I have known each other now for, well, when did we first meet? 2014, something like that?
No, before that, because you were on Graceland. So that was 2010,
2013. No, it would have been about 2013, 2014, or I think. I can't even remember. It was a long time ago.
It was before that, because I just left
Forge Star.
Mm-hmm. And you were, I want to say it was like 2 years that I knew you. So I want to say like 2012, 2011, around
maybe
then.
That's what it was. Yeah. So it was, Peter, there's leads right into it. You were working at Forge Star. That's like the kicks version of the car world. They make wheels for, aftermarket wheels for cars, which I've always wanted to be this guy that had like multiple pairs of, or multiple sets of wheels for my cars, just to like switch them up like I do my sneakers. And I don't have that kind of money just yet, but we're working on it. But no, Peter, tell us a bit about your history, because that you had been in the car world for a long time prior to me meeting you there, and again, you've gone on to do a whole lot of other things, which we'll get into. With Hyundai, there's a whole bunch of stuff we've talked about on the show. I'm sure you've heard, but we'll let you get into that. But give us a little bit of background about your history in sneakers and cars.
So to start off with sneakers, that was just like a thing that my dad was always into, not necessarily like into like the sneaker game, but he was always saying that you always had to have a nice watch and you always had a nice clean pair of shoes. And so that was always my thing growing up. And so playing sports, I had my idols. I had Deion Sanders, I had Bruce Smith, Rodman, and Jordan. And so I started playing baseball at like 4 years old, and then progressed to football and basketball. And I just started to wear a lot of those sneakers. Like I got the Deons. Like I remember having those, and I had the Reebok Iverson shoes, like the answers and the questions. Mm-hmm. And then moved up to like, once my dad and I started having like the same size shoe, Sport Mart. For some of you kids that don't know what Sport Mart is, it's like pretty much like the Foot Action or even like a Dick's Sporting Goods. Pretty much they had a buy one, get 50% off sale, like when the Jordan like 12s came out. And I remember like that was my first pair of Jordans that I ever got, because my dad got 2 pairs of them because he can only he's like, I can't just buy one, like it's 50% off. And then that's what like started like my whole sneaker thing. And I just kept going with it. And
that's cool. And my son's he's a long way off of wearing my same shoe size, but I'm keeping a few, kind of in good shape, at least in hopes that they don't fall apart by the time he's able to start wearing them. So, although I spent way too much money on him early on when he was, before he was really walking, I was like, I'm going to get him these Jordans. I'm going to get him these. And I did. And then he outgrows them. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll just get him the next size. And then, man, you should see how this kid thrashes shoes nowadays. So now I go find what's on sale and I buy that. And that's what he wears, because it gets real expensive real quick. But no, that's cool that your dad got you into that. Now, on the car side of thing, your dad wasn't really a car guy, was he?
No. So my dad, he's from Michigan, from Grand Rapids area, and he was like a GM guy. So he was always like Cadillac. He always had his Cadillacs. And funny enough, my mom in 1987, I remember she got the first Hyundai XL when it first like came here. That's actually the same exact car that is in Boys in the Hood when they shoot Ricky out of the red one. My mom had a
that's a fun fact.
My mom had a blue one. And so like I've always been, I guess, in the Hyundai family since they like introduced themselves into the US. And I got into cars pretty much around 1995 when the movie Bad Boys 1 came out.
Yes.
I saw that black 964, I believe, or 96.
Yeah, 965 technically, because it was the turbo. The 964 chassis. Yeah, anyway, that's geeky stuff. But yes, that era of 911 turbo.
Yeah, and I saw that, and I was like, a black person having a Porsche? Like, I never heard of that. I was like, I got to have one of these one day.
That's dope.
I started getting into Hondas, like got into Civics and CRXs and Integras. Like I remember going to a lot of the street races. Don't go to street races, kids, especially these sideshows. Don't do any of that stuff. And I was always like influenced by my shoes matching my car. And so like I was always like having to have like this personality that like whatever shoes I got, they always got to match the car that I have. And
that's awesome.
That's kind of like how they kind of mesh together. And then I got into like modifying them, started going to car shows because that was better than going to street races. And then, I got into a Ford Star, which was a brand that we started around 2007. And I met the owner of Ford Star from a car crew that I was in with my Audi that I had. And ever since then, I've been in the automotive industry and just been loving it. It's funny how my love for photography and video, that I was just taking pictures of my own cars and shoes back in 2003 to 2004, like led me on this path of where I am now.
Yeah, it's a shout out to Forge Star and to you, Peter, because y'all were like one of my first sponsors, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
Peter, I guess again we met when I was doing that show Graceland, and I guess you watched the show, and then we connected through the car world and found out you were watching the show. I was like, oh, dope. And then I found out you worked at Forge Star. I was like, cool, I got this Boss 302 Mustang that could use some wheel. And so Peter hooked me up with a set of Forge Stars from my Boss 302, which was dope. So that's he's one of my OG sponsors right there. So thank you for that, dope. Peter.
Yeah, I think it was your manager that actually reached out originally, because I was like, what? I was like, all right, sure. Like, I'll see what we can do. And like, because we had so many people, like, because we were such a new brand, and we had so many people contacting us. So I was like, whatever. Like, if it gets us exposure, sure, why not? Or just get someone a pair of wheels. Like, it doesn't harm us. It only helps us with our marketing.
Yeah. No, it was. I love that. It was cool, man. You mentioned a bit of your videography and your, all your kind of passion with photography and everything like that. And we'll get into that here in a minute too, but that's something kind of ties into how Peter and I have known each other as well, as beyond that initial friendship and that kind of like, oh, we found out we both like cars. Oh, we also like kicks. Oh, I got this opportunity. I was racing in doing some IMSA races in the Continental Sports Car Series at the time, and ended up getting an opportunity to put this whole thing together for Continental Tire, unrelated to motorsports. It was a MLS thing, because I think Continental Tire was a sponsor for Major League Soccer at the time. And Sherry Henderson, who used to work over there, shout out to Sherry, she's great. She knew that, I'm in the entertainment side of things, and they were looking to do some, I guess, for lack of a better term, like branded content stuff for the internet and for social media and everything. And so she kind of tasked me with producing some, how do you make tires and car related stuff interact with the soccer world, and how can that be cool? And Continental Tire was also making rubber for some of the soles of like Adidas. They had a collaboration with Adidas on a lot of their booth stuff, making the soles for that for a while. And so I brainstormed a bit and then put together this group of people to create this content. And Peter was one of my guys for that. So he came on and shot some of this stuff over the course of a couple days, and it turned out really cool. And so it's just we've had a lot in common for a long time, and here we are talking cars and kicks on a podcast over a decade later. So yeah, Jacques, we haven't brought you into the mix much because Nick and I started geeking out. They have the Honda connection and the sneaker connection, and then Peter and I. So yeah, I know you're chomping at the bit to ask some questions here, because offline, I'm going to call you out here, Peter. But Peter has been a fan of Jacques for quite some time, so this kind of all comes full circle here, the way this is coming together.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the perfect like podcast guest. Like, he loves cars, he loves kicks, he loves videography. Like, this is everything that I think all of us are really into. So this has got to be perfect. It'll be great for, I think, the people that are watching as well, or people that are listening as well. So Peter, talk to a little bit about your transition to the position that you're in now from Fordham. Is that I'm saying that right? Ford Star. From Ford Star to the position that you're in now, and like how your roles and responsibilities changed based on the new position that you're in.
So right now, a lot of people don't know, I'm the director of content creation for Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. And so I oversee a team of content creators that do all the photography and video for a lot of the social media that you'll see. So most of the time, if you see something on those channels, me or my team have shot it. So when I worked at Forge Star, it was kind of like I wore a lot of hats. So I did photography, I did a lot of the social media, I also did sales, and then we also like unloaded trucks and put them on there, and like I helped with like sponsorship. So wearing a lot of hats there kind of like helped me get to this position that I have now. And so I met this guy, Charlie Ashby. Shout out to Charlie. He was in the Audi community. We both had Audis, and he was telling me about this job that he had, that he was working with Hyundai, and he was they were looking for someone kind of like me that knows cars, but that also knows the production side of it. So that knows like how they can be shot or how we can talk about certain features. And so he brought me in on the team as what do they call it now? A product specialist. So a product specialist knows anything and everything about the cars, and they know like how to feature some of the features or the cars. And so like Apple CarPlay or automatic emergency braking, all that. So I was always on set. We were always helping with the creative because we are an extension of the creative department. So I was always on set, and I was always like, you guys know, like I do photography and video, right? They're like, oh, that's cool. Like, we'll see. And so I was like, no, I've been doing it for like a long time. Like I got like automotive photographer of the year. Like I have a pedigree of like being able to do all this stuff. And so right around 2019, 2020, I was going to leave because I was like, well, I want to have this position of being a content creator in-house. And there was nothing like that really. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to like leave and like do my own thing and start my own production company. And that was like, if I didn't have this position by 2020, someone heard about it, Jill Poole, and she asked me like, what can we do? And so they pretty much made this position for me. And ever since then, like I was the one that like helped start this content creator role. And then we've built on from there. So I have 7 people underneath me now.
That's super cool, man.
Yeah.
That's really dope. So they're all content creators, and
Right.
you employ them on your team to create content for
Right.
Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis.
Yeah, so we're photographers, we're DPs, we are we can do like visual effects, we can do retouching, we can do editing, we can do pretty much everything. So we're like a mixed bag, and everyone has their like specialties that they can do, and so I can send them out to like different productions that we have.
That's amazing. That's cool.
Yeah, it's
So,
you'll have to go look at, y'all that are listening out there, have to go check out the stuff on Hyundai socials and everything, and check out Peter's body of work because it's really dope. But I wanted to touch on something here because you've been in the Hyundai world. That's the first I found out that your mom had the same car as featured in Boys in the Hood. But you've been in the Hyundai world for a long time, and Hyundai, we've talked about it a handful of times on the podcast because I think Hyundai, Kia have really nailed this glow up, so to speak, over the past decade, especially. And we've had a couple comments on socials of people that are naysayers still, but I think it takes time for people to get converted. But a couple podcasts ago, Jacques brought up the grandeur concept, that old 80s looking car, which he is enamored with. And since then there's been all this talk here recently about the Envision 74 being, it's going into production, and then there's been some backtrack and everything. So we're going to put you on the spot here, Peter, and we're going to have you talk a bit about Hyundai's direction design-wise with their inside of the inside of things, because you also own an IONIQ 5N, which is super dope. So I want to hear from the source, like how have they managed this glow up, and where are they going with all of this stuff?
Well, under the NDA, let me say, first of all, that I cannot talk about the Envision 74 or the grandeur. Like, I will say that they are close to approving it. I don't know why I keep getting all these messages on Instagram, like all these DMs, like, so I need one. How do I get it? And I was like, in the Envision 74, I'm like, this is the first I'm hearing about it, because like High Snobiety and everyone, Hype Beast, they're all posting like, yeah, it got approved. Like, and I was like, nah, like I know directly that it hasn't gotten approved. I know firsthand because I work for them.
We got to backtrack because we posted that too. So
no, but I know that they're like it's really serious about the Envision 74. Now, as far as the hydrogen hybrid system, I'm not sure that they're going to be doing that specifically, just because hydrogen is limited to like California, and they just shut down like 30 hydrogen stations up in NorCal. So like you're very limited. Yeah. So, and like it takes like 5 minutes, and like some people have to wear mittens when they're actually fueling because it gets so cold, like the handle does. Yeah. So the Envision 74, I'm just gonna put this out there, I don't know 100%. I think it's going to be full electric. or probably like a mild hybrid or something like that, which makes a lot of sense because that's the direction that Hyundai is kind of going now. They're going to more electrification rather than doing ICE vehicles, just because in 2035 California has to be like fully EV, like for cars that they're going to be selling, which I don't know if that's still going to stand, but Hyundai, their glow up is all because of Peter Schreier and Albert Bierman. Albert Bierman, if you guys don't know, he was like the head technical advisor for BMW M Performance. Yeah. So he's the one that did like the E36 M3 and up. And then I want to say in 2018, Hyundai probably offered him a bag and was like, hey, we want you to come over here and bring the M performance to Hyundai. And he came over, and he's made such a huge leap in their performance aspect, especially like with the Veloster N, and then you had the Elantra N, and then the Kona N, and now they're moving over to electrification and doing something that no one's ever really done, and doing the IONIQ 5N performance. But this car acts like it simulates like it's like it has a clutch, so it like you can change gears on it. It also has sound, so like it will go up in RPMs, and it's completely different than anything that's out there right now. And I personally like it. I come from having ICE vehicles. Like I have a 997 turbo Porsche. Like I love the sound, I love the feel, I love how visceral it is. But at the same time, like having an EV, the IONIQ 5N, like it's just a whole new world. And like anytime I take anybody in the car, they're just like tripping at how fast and like it just accelerates and gets going.
I don't want to go too far off tangent here because I want to stay focused on a bit of this, but I do want to circle back to something you said at the top of the show, because I think it's extremely cool to see something like this realized. You mentioned you watching Bad Boys and seeing Will Smith's character with a black 911 turbo and how that got you into cars. And then you just let it slip that you also now happen to have a black 911 turbo. So just, I'm going to give you a little round of applause because it's cool to see dreams come full circle and get realized, man. So shouts out to you and all your hard work and realizing a dream. And we won't get too emotional on this, but I just had to recircle that back because it's super cool to see, man.
Well, fun fact about my 997, me getting that, like I always wanted that car. Like I wanted a black Porsche. I wanted to get a 964 or 993, but they were so expensive at the time. And I was like, I don't want to get an air-cooled car, pay $50,000 for it. And then there's not that many mechanics at the time that I knew that worked on them. Now I know that there's a lot like sleepers and BBI and Emotion. But like at the time I was like, I don't want to spend that much money and on a car that's going to like possibly cause me problems, especially in the future. And the funny thing is the only reason why I was able to even buy that car, because first of all, I have 2 kids. And so my wife and I made a deal. So we had our first daughter and I really wanted a boy. So we were going to have another kid. And so she was like, okay, if we have another girl, you get to get whatever car that you want. But if we have a boy, you have to get a mommy makeover. And so I end up having another girl and I end up getting my 997 and this is like my boy.
Amazing.
Wow. I mean, that's really like a win-win all the way around because, you get another kid and you still get a car. That's
exactly.
Dope. Oh,
yeah. So that was an interesting thing. And people were like, I don't understand how you're able to get the car and have 2 kids. And I was like, I got a car that has back seats. And so I was able to put them in the back seat too. So that's
people don't realize how practical a 911 is.
It really is.
It's
not mine. Mine isn't practical.
Well, yeah, because
I don't know if that's a sentence I would have ever used. I don't know if that's a
we're
sentence
definitely
I would have
clipping
ever
that and sending it to all of our significant others. We're going to put it on social. Yeah.
I have a lot done to mine. I have a lot of suspension work because I used to track the car. So a lot of suspension work done by BBI, and it's about like 630 horsepower, 800 pounds of torque.
Yeah. Jacques, you know all about that, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what that means. Like,
yeah, Jacques knows.
The torque. He torqued that thing up for sure.
Oh man. No, shout out to BBI too, but Tim and those guys over there for all the car geeks listening here. They run a really really tight ship and do some really cool stuff with mainly 911 turbos, but some other cars as well. But going back to kind of what we were talking about with Hyundai and your position over there and in the future, because you touched on a couple of other things here that I think are worth talking about. One of them being the electrification and where you see that going, because we've talked about this on our podcast a couple times actually. You get the really like deep car guys, and I'm sure you get this too, Peter, who are still anti-EV, right?
Oh yeah.
And then you've got guys like me and you who are as hardcore as it gets when it comes to cars, but we also happen to have EVs in the driveway because we understand the use case and everything. Now, you touched on the 2035 rule with California and how Hyundai is gearing everything more towards electrification. What is the internal conversation like? Because right now we're seeing not necessarily a full-on decline in EV sales, but there's still some resistance to EV, moving over to EVs in other parts, especially states like Texas, where I live right now. And so what is the internal conversation like when you've got some kind of a slowdown in what we thought was just going to be this huge ramp up to EV and everybody be driving EVs by 2025, and we're not seeing that yet? So how is Hyundai handling that?
I think it comes down to infrastructure, like not having enough charging stations, and especially you're not able to drive a long distance without having to stop at least 2 times. I think that's what's hindering a lot of people, and that's why they rather go with a plug-in hybrid or a hybrid versus a full electric, and not everyone has access to being able to charge at their house, because they might live in an apartment building, right? And apartment buildings still only have like 8 spots that they can do, and you have like 1,000 residents. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing for a lot of these car companies, because they're just not going to have the way to charge them. And like, there's people fighting at charging stations. Like, it's like, come on guys, like it's 35 minutes, like just go do your thing. And like, there's no like order of like how people pull into the parking lot, and then how you're supposed to like do every other stall if it's not busy. And
it's like walking up to urinals. You never park in the stall right next to the stall
never.
That's taken.
Never. And I like how you were saying that that there's a lot of gas or ICE vehicle drivers that are still like really stuck on like, they don't like electrification. They especially don't like Tesla. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's just another car brand, and it's American made. I don't understand why people are like it. But I kind of think it's like the sneakerheads that grew up with the Tiffany Dunks, or a lot of the people that are like love Yeezys, but they hate the Panda Dunks because they're so popular, and because everyone is wearing them. I mean, I personally don't wear Panda Dunks. I'm not a fan, but
No, I like that comparison. I understand what you're saying a bit there. It's I witnessed a bit of, and this is going to lead me into another question about kind of Hyundai's thing, but I went to the WEC race down at COTA, Circuit of the Americas, this past weekend with my son, who's massive. He lost his mind this whole weekend watching these cars. He's been to a handful of races, but never seen the prototypes or the hypercars as they call them, and the GT cars and everything. And we got really great treatment by from WEC and the McLaren guys and AF Corsa Ferrari, and got garage tours, and Enzo sat in one of the McLaren race cars and got pictures by the Ferrari 499 SP, and it was awesome. But all that is to say, we did that in my Rivian, right? It's not a long road trip from Dallas, but it requires charging along the way. I am lucky enough to have a home charger, so 95% of the time I just plug in at the house and I'm good to go the next day, etc. But I have experienced this, being at the mercy of the infrastructure and what's out there. And I will say, like, Tesla's supercharger network is by far the holy grail of
Yeah.
EV chargers right now. When you're at the mercy of EVgo, EV America, whatever some of these others are, half the time they're not working, they're throttled, there's people there fighting, like you said. I was able to use exclusively Tesla superchargers, with the exception of there is a Rivian charger along the way as well. I have an adapter for the Tesla charger, and I was able to do that, and I find it to be completely seamless. Like, you go in, you don't even have to pay at the pump like you would at a gas station. You've got an app, and it's linked to your account and your credit card. And as soon as you plug in, it knows what vehicle is being charged based on the VIN number or whatever digital stuff it's reading. And then you just get an email after you're done saying, hey, this is what your charging session cost you. Have a nice day. So my question with kind of solving the infrastructure problem is Hyundai talking about this? Are they going to be partnering like some people are with Tesla, or are they going to venture into their own charging network and start to invest in putting charging stations and stuff out there to kind of incentivize people's move over to EVs in the future?
Don't quote me exactly, but I remember last year there was a time where 8 companies are going to come together, like GM, Hyundai, Honda, and I think a couple other companies, and Toyota. I think they were all going to come together and kind of make like a super pact of like, we're going to open up 50,000 chargers like in the US. I can't remember exactly like the companies that were doing that, but there is talks with Tesla, from what I know, just reading online, that Tesla is opening up to other companies. It's just a matter of flipping that switch for them to be able to activate it through the car. Because like right now there's a Tesla adapter for Hyundai, but I can't use it until January 2025, I think they were saying.
That's just because of the internal politics between Tesla and Hyundai and the contracts and all that other stuff? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I think Rivian and Ford were the first to have like that adapter and have like the app work with the car, like for it to connect and everything.
Yeah, that's
I've been
interesting.
reading a lot. Yeah, I've been reading a lot about that, just because I didn't necessarily want a Tesla at first. I wanted the Mach-E was the one that I wanted at first, but the charging thing was just like, it's just so much simpler if you get a Tesla. We even looked at a couple of different electric vehicles, and it was just like the supercharger network is just so much easier to deal with. You don't have to worry about it. And I have a charger here at the house, but even still, it was just like, it's easier to not have to deal with that, the EVgoes and all that stuff. Just Electrify America. It seems like they break down so much. You hear so many stories about them breaking down. So it was just scary. But it's good to the Tesla stuff, opening it up to the other manufacturers. And as a supercharger user, I in a sense I do kind of feel a certain kind of way about it, because they're already busy.
Yeah,
and it's not that like I don't want them to use the infrastructure. It's just that it's already busy. So now it's like, it's just going to get, now where is it going to go? How much busier is it going to get? And so you want to, if anything, I want this to be like a kick in the ass for EVgo and Electrify America to really get their thing together, because it can't just be Tesla. Like don't just have Chevron station. We have Shell and we have Arco and BP, we have all of these others. Yeah. We need DBP. Like we need all of these different sort of stations to really get it together. Otherwise, it's just going to make it, it's just going to make the experience worse, which makes it worse for someone wanting to buy an electric car, whether they buy the IONIQ or they buy the Y. Like the experience is going to be so bad for them because the charging infrastructure isn't there. Like I'm lucky because I live in California near LA. So of course we're going to be great. Like we're going to be Gucci here because that's, this is full on Tesla land and, like Rivian land. Like there's more Rivian and Teslas on the road, I feel like, than anything else around here. Yeah. So they're going to get it together here. But like someone that, that lives in Bakersfield, like What's that experience like? Someone,
It's not bad, actually. It's just the
Oh.
more rural areas. No, I'm saying the more rural areas, that's where, like, I was driving on the 395 coming back from Tahoe, and like I didn't even find gas stations, and I was like, where are people going to charge like within this 100-mile distance? Like, I don't understand it. And I saw some Teslas and I was like, I hope they topped off and they make it to wherever their destination is, because I don't know where. But like, you go down the 5, you go down the 405, the 101, there's Tesla charging stations everywhere. Like at my hotel I stayed at, I was like, geez, like there was like 15 of them right there. And so like Tesla has it right. And I hate to admit that, even though I work for Hyundai, I actually owned a Tesla Model Y before I got my 5N. But yeah, like the charging network is what drew me to buying a Tesla before getting a Hyundai.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely what kept me from getting an electric vehicle when I bought the Ridgeline, right? It's, this trip that I just took, I'm doing 400 plus miles on a tank of gas up the coast on Highway 1. And there's 5 gas stations and some, over the course of a couple of hours or whatever, if they're even open, if you're there at the right time, like once you get into those, like the drives that we all love, to be honest, like the more outside of the cities that we can get, the more fun the drive is. But I think that's what kept me from getting it, getting something electric. But I think the thing that I wanted to kind of circle back to is, so I haven't told Eric and Jacques this, but I have pretty close ties to Hyundai. And in 1999, HKS built a supercharger. Well, technically Rimmer Engineering built a supercharger for the Accent. My friend ended up with that car that went to SEMA, and it was an HKS. It was in the magazines for HKS. And that car led to his other car, which was a Dodge Neon RT, being the platform that Rimmer Engineering built the supercharger for. Fast forward, to 2008, my brother ended up buying like an Accent, hatchback. At that time, Honda had gone away from hatchbacks almost completely. And, we did the usual like full suspension, and he put some RPF ones on it and, tracked it and everything. And those cars, because they're affordable, lend themselves to being customized. But it never really caught on the way, the Honda scene did back in the day. But I wanted to hear what you think about what Hyundai is doing with the N line, because to me, they're really the first company that's like embracing the tuner aspect, the performance aspect of electric vehicles on a level that we absolutely haven't seen from any other electric manufacturers. And to me, that's a really important thing. And I'm wondering if that will also help put more chargers on the road, to me, it like kind of goes hand in hand with cars. I don't know, maybe, but
yeah, it seems like they're going 100% towards electrification, and you'll see more probably in the next couple of auto shows. I can't say exactly what, but at some auto shows, you'll be seeing some more cars and some more reveals. But yeah, I don't see many companies, especially like Honda. Like Honda doesn't really do electric cars. Like I think they have like
they got the Prologue and I think that's it. And then Toyota, they don't really want to do like full electric either. Like they're either doing a plug-in, or they're also doing the hydrogen with the Mirai, which is an interesting take, because even in Japan, they have like a city that's powered by hydrogen. So I think that they're more going towards the hydrogen, which again, like I said, doesn't make sense in the United States when there's only one state that really has hydrogen. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting time, especially with Porsche now going with the hybrid setups, and they're going more electric, and you have companies like Lucid and a lot of Chinese companies. Like there's so many Chinese companies that are going to be coming out with cars, and this isn't just the United States, this is worldwide. And in Costa Rica, I know that China is providing a lot of cars for Costa Rica. Yeah. Is that BYD? That's BYD doing that down there. Yeah.
And Neo, I think.
Neo, yeah.
I wanted to kind of touch back a little bit more on Albert Behrman's influence with, the inliner of everything, because I think to me, this is what's going to be, aside from the infrastructure and all the, the other elements of the EV transition, so to speak, this is going to be an integral part of getting people to come over to that side of things too, because making electric cars exciting is key. I mean, there are still a big group of people to buy cars just to get from point A to point B, and you're not ever going to be able to ignore them because they're the ones that pay the bills. But there are enthusiasts. We're at a whole other level of enthusiasm over here, but there are automotive enthusiasts that still like to enjoy the vehicle that they're in, and they still like to look back at it when they park it and have a sense of pride in whatever they've got. And I really like this approach that Hyundai has with your car, the IONIQ 5N, and the whole, yes, the argument can be made, oh, it's fabricated, the sounds, the RPMs, the virtual gears and all these other things. But we live in a world now where a lot of the younger generation have never really experienced the stuff that we got to experience with internal combustion. And half of them, more than half, don't even know how to drive a manual transmission or anything. It's all paddle shift, and they play video games to kill their time. So I think this is a really unique approach to making cars EVs exciting by adding some of these elements. And I haven't had a chance to drive the 5N. If y'all got press cars out in Dallas area, send one my way, because that'd be a lot of fun to experience. But tell me a little bit more about that approach. Yeah, please do. But tell me more about that approach.
I know people.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. I was going to say, we'll talk about that at the end. I was going to say, because you can send a G70 over here. That'd be great. Or even like the G80. That'd
We're just going to send you our addresses at the end of this, Peter. Yeah. And you could just send cars to all of us.
Just send whatever you want.
I know the people that are in charge of like handing out those cars, especially to like influencers and press. And you guys are considered influencers. So like, we'll talk after this about how I can get you guys set up.
That's what you were talking about, Eric. It's something I wanted to ask about, like, because I often, as an outsider, I often hear about like the way a car feels and the way that a car sounds and the rumble and all of that. And that, as somebody that did music, you can't necessarily replicate that with speakers. You know what I mean? You don't give that same feeling, that same, I don't know, that same energy isn't there. How, now that you've got the N, do you feel, is it an approximate of what you usually feel for cars in that area? Or do you feel like this feels as genuine as it would be if this was an ICE engine?
It's the weirdest thing, because so the engine sound comes from the front. And when it does its bangs and pops, it has a performance. It has a speaker in the back, and you can hear it. So like as you shift, it goes boom, 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 like as you downshift. So it's like, it's the weirdest thing that you're able to mimic, because they actually took the sound from an Elantra N. And so they just tuned it where it's like, okay, from 2,000 to 6,000 RPMs, this is how it's going to sound. And so they're able to put that in the software. Again, I don't know all of this because I'm not an engineer or like, but that's how they engineered it to pretty much mimic one of the cars that's already existing. So it's an interesting thing, because I always leave it on, because like driving with the Tesla, it was just so numb. And I was just like, this is kind of boring. Like, but like having the sound, especially when I accelerate and like I can hear it like get louder as I'm accelerating and changing gears, like that helps a lot with a lot of feedback, especially like coming from performance cars and driving on the track. And like, I even do that with my sim racing. My sim racing like mimics the exact same feeling, because like it has force feedback, and like my pedals vibrate, the steering wheel vibrates, like everything all does everything exactly the same.
That's
which a lot of people don't want to hear. To
Jacques' point into what you just said about your sim racing, is there something tactile with the 5N? Like, when you do the quote unquote upshifts, so to speak, do you feel a vibration of sorts, or is it just strictly the sound?
When you upshift, it'll move. So like it feels like you're actually shifting. Yeah, like I said, I have to send you one or like take you in a ride when you come out to LA, Jock. I'll drive up to you. Like, it's insane at how it mimics a real car. I don't understand how they did it. It's like weird. Like,
let's not say real car. How it mimics an ice car.
An ice car.
Let's not say real car.
Yeah, an ice car.
Good looking out, Jock. Let's
as an IONIQ 5N guy, you know what I'm saying? I'm offended that you would say that my IONIQ 5N is not a real car.
That is a good look, Jock.
That is good. My bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
See, it's okay. As the car guy on this podcast, I think we need to set some boundaries here, guys.
Oh, I think that's super fascinating, though. You know, and I think that the draw to electric vehicles, right? This has to be a part of it. Like anybody that you ask, even at Car Week, older guy came up to me, like I was looking at these, 964 electric conversions that a company called Everati does. And he walks up to me and he's like, I just don't see how it'll work. He's still got his 85 911 and just wants that feeling, that sound, all of the, the visceral feeling that we talk about all the time. Right. But like this to me is, if nothing else, it's a stepping stone for so many people that are just curious, like, can it mimic, to what extent can it give me that feeling that we're also like just afraid of with electric vehicles? Mm-hmm. Like losing that feeling seems to be like the biggest fear for literally like in generations of like car enthusiasts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a great person. This didn't necessarily have to become a podcast about EVs, but it went that way for good reason. Yeah. And I want to say it's really cool. It's not just me saying this, on the podcast. We have Peter here who has a 911 turbo and also has this IONIQ, 5N and sings its praises. And I think that is the tip of the iceberg, right? You're getting stuff like this in car people's hands and making them realize, hey, there's a use case for this, and they can actually be fun. I mean, again, my Rivian doesn't make anywhere near the cool sounds that the 5N does, but that 835 horsepower, whatever it is plenty fun, regardless of what kind of sounds it does or doesn't make when you're driving it. And I think the more people experience that, the better it's gonna be for everybody. The other thing that I was gonna touch on with the IONIQ 5 is they just, and maybe we're wrong about this, but they just announced this XRT version, right? Which is like a kind of off-road or rally style version of the IONIQ 5. What can you tell us about that?
I'm surprised that you knew about that. Yeah, that was actually just last week. They had a ride and drive press event, and I was actually there for that.
Ah, cool.
And that's going to be an interesting thing because I don't necessarily know who's going to purchase that, just because I consider the 5N as a hot hatch and not as a small SUV. So they lifted it 1 inch and then they put more protection on the front bumpers and the rear bumpers. But you also have to make sure that you have enough clearance on the bottom, because off-roading an EV, your battery tray is on the bottom and something can possibly happen. And so they've taken a lot of precaution with the XRT, and it looks cool. I don't necessarily think it's for me. I was joking around with them and saying, I want to put the bumpers and make my car look like the XRT and like lift it, but then it's fast enough where people are like, wait, what's going on here? Like, why is this lifted 5 going so fast by me and he has like mud tires on? Like, it makes no sense.
See, I see that as like the transition from like the Subaru crowd, right? So wanting to go EV and still wanting to go on their camping trips and take their dogs and throw some kayaks on the roof and maybe a rooftop tent or something like that. And so when I saw this, I got kind of excited about it. And, I think it's just kind of another niche area that they're starting to venture into. I think Rivian was one of the first to kind of, venture into adventure everything is kind of their motto, right?
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing that because I don't remember exactly what it is, but their whole thing is to kind of let the world know that, hey, you're not limited. Yes, the range is maybe 250, 300 miles or whatever. That doesn't mean you can only go 300 miles and then you're stuck. Like, there are charging networks being put in, and you can, if you plan accordingly, you can go off grid, and you can, take your, in this case, the IONIQ 5 XRT camping for a weekend and stuff like that. And one of the things we found, my son and I went on a camping trip recently with the Rivian as well. And I got a Blackstone, these little like griddles that everybody gets to cook on and everything. Well, they make an electric one, and I plugged that into the back of my truck. And so we got up and we made breakfast, plugged the electric griddle into my electric truck, and just had this nice little like bacon and egg breakfast, that was completely gasless or whatever you want to call it. There was no, none of that involved.
Propane,
and so it's like, it's this whole, I feel like it's a whole new world. And for me, maybe that's not so much my car guy thing. It's more of like, I've always been, even as a kid, I was intrigued by what's new technology wise, and that was part of like, even with sneakers, like when stuff would come out. Yeah, I still love my retros, but we were talking about this on a podcast recently. What's new in sneakers, what's the new technology, what's going to make it kind of exciting. And I'm always one of those that likes to be an early adopter of that stuff. And sometimes that technology, whether it be cars, whether it be sneakers, fails and you never really hear about it again. But I like to kind of be the quote unquote beta tester of a lot of this stuff. So to me, it's really cool to see what Hyundai's doing, what Rivian's doing, in terms of making electric vehicles exciting. And again, did not mean this to be an EV podcast specifically, but it just kind of went that way. And we're hearing a lot of really good information from the source, from our man Peter here over at Hyundai. So it's exciting times, man.
Yeah, and you know how we were talking about the access to charging stations? I kind of want to put that as like in the context of like trying to get the latest drop, trying to get the latest drop through the sneakers app is like one of the hardest things. And then you're going to have to go through another source just to try to get the same shoes, but you're not going to get them at retail. I feel like that's kind of how we are with the charging situation.
Yeah, that's a great way to tie it. I was gonna say, that's another thing, and not that this is your fault or anything like that, but like the dynamic pricing that's happening with charging now. Like the pricing for charging is going up significantly. Like that was just reading about it, and like it's gone up like 3x in a lot of places. And it's almost like it's literally almost like getting gas at this point, based on how expensive the stuff is kind of getting. The electricity is getting. But it's like where does this? This was the sell with electricity. Hey, it's cheaper. It's better. It's better than gas. Like you don't have to spend as much money. But it doesn't seem like that thought or that it's not panning out for a lot of people. Like I have it here, so I'm lucky that I have it at home. Yeah. But if I had to use a supercharger every time, like if you go in the middle of the day, you might get charged like crazy rates. Like if you need to go get gas on your lunch break, like you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, we may need to like back off this conversation, because I just saw that StockX is partnering with Walmart, so they might try to start reselling charging units or something here soon if you guys aren't careful.
Man, we're this close to that. I fear.
You could see it happening.
Yeah.
But just to go back to kind of like the beginning of our conversation, Peter. As a creative, I'm always interested in like the path that other creators go on. So is there any advice you have for up and coming creatives that want to get into like the car photography space, or they want to get their first camera, or they want to do their first photo shoot with a car? What are some like tips that you would give to somebody that's just getting into that space, that's looking to like update their portfolio, or even just to start their journey?
First, I'm going to say you're going to suck in the beginning. Don't go out and buy some camera. Use your phone for the time being. Like iPhones and Androids are so powerful now. You can get such good images and such good video from them. So I would suggest like starting there and figure out if this is what you want to do, because I photograph what I love. Like I love my life, like with my kids, my traveling, cars, my shoes. Like, find what you love and then try to photograph them and try to make it different. So I like to reverse engineer things that I see. Like if I see like how someone shot something, I'll reverse engineer. I'm like, okay, I can see the lights coming from the left side. So they created like a little shadow, and then they put a little bounce so they can put a little more fill on whatever, like the wheels or whatever. And yeah, just play around and have fun. Like, I don't take it too serious. And once you make it like your job, that's when it gets a little harder for you to like want to be creative and want to love what you do.
Yeah, that's dope. That's a great. I love it when Jacques asks the good questions here. We go off on the tangents and stuff, and then he comes through with the deep stuff, which is great. No, I love it, man. Peter, it's we could talk for hours on all this stuff, but I want to thank you for coming on the show. You are officially our second guest. So we don't have anything to give you for that, but virtual high fives. But no, man, we really appreciate you coming on, sharing some of your stories, sharing your passions for both cars and kicks. And man, I hope you continue to listen even after your episode here. You don't just forget about us.
Yeah.
No, it's things that I'm interested in. Like, I love cars and kicks, and so that's another reason why. And I want to thank you guys. This is actually my first podcast that I've actually been invited to and actually been on, and so I want to thank you guys. Yeah, like it's weird. Like, I never get invited to be on podcasts or anything, or even like featured on anyone's channel. So I'm like, this is cool that I was able to do this and be able to use my equipment that I use, because all of this is all for all my sim racing stuff. So like all my lights and my mics and everything is all for all my sim racing.
That makes sense. I was gonna say, because you have a nice setup. Lighting is nice. I was like, you got shadow side on on his face. I was like, yeah,
you can see
crafted
right here.
an image here.
That's my sim racing rig.
Jacques, you should see this setup here. We got to get Jacques at least on a sim here soon. Like, do you have a sim rig, Nick, by chance?
I don't at this point. I had one years back, but yeah, I need to get one. I need to get back to
we
it.
all need to get one. Yeah. I got one nowhere near as fancy as Peter's, but that's what we need to do is do that and then jump on virtual races together. I want to see Jacques on a virtual racetrack. Maybe even before a real racetrack, just because it doesn't hurt as much.
I would put
him on there. Yeah,
yeah, it's probably the best bet before I get on an actual racetrack. Just so I don't injure myself or someone else. So I like that idea.
Yeah, tune into Peter, my stuff, John.
Tell people where to find you.
So you can find me on Instagram, Steezy Nickel. It's SteezyNickel. And then my YouTube channel is Steezy is Gaming. So that's where I do all my sim racing, and also I do Twitch too. So Steezy is Gaming on Twitch. I live stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just
How do you find time for all this?
So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's like an hour. I do league races, so it's at like 8:00. My kids are doing their homework. My kids are grown. Like my oldest is 14, my youngest is 11.
Wow.
My wife is off doing her own thing, so it's like that's my time to like go and do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, like sometimes on Saturdays, I'll race with my teammates, and we'll do like endurance races. So I'll do 24-hour races, 12-hour races, 6 and 8-hour races, like on my sim. So yeah.
That's crazy. Well,
that
Peter,
is crazy.
Thank you again for joining us, man. I'm honored that we could be your first podcast.
Yes.
And everybody, you can rewind the pod to find at Steezy Nickel on all the socials if you didn't get that. I'm Eric Valdez. It's at Eric Valdez, ErikValdez. Nick.
I'm at Nick Engvall, NickEngvall. Shock.
And I'm Jacques Slade, at Cousteau, Kustoo, on all the places on the internet. We are the Cars and Kicks podcast. Hope you enjoy. Make sure you follow us on all of the places: Apple, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon, all the places, YouTube, we're there. Subscribe, leave comments. I think we've got to tell them to review, leave us a good review.
Absolutely.
Tell your mama and them, so that they watch, and then make your kids watch it when they don't do their homework, so they learn something. All right, y'all. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See y'all.